Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Women's Hour with Amila. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in Birmingham, and I will be your host for the next hour or so. I hope everybody is well. Kids are back at school now. I think it's gone into second week, and I hope everybody's surviving so far. I'm going to go on and introduce my next guest. She is, like when I think of her, the first word that actually comes to mind when I close my eyes are the word humble. She is a very humble, and patience is what's come through when I think of my next guest. I'm going to introduce her, Nasreen Akhtar. Assalamu alaikum, Nasreen.
Walaikum assalam, sister.
And welcome to the Women's Hour with Amina, and thank you so much for taking the time out. How have you been?
Alhamdulillah, sister, I've been fine. Just getting along with the daily norm of life.
The new norm, which is now becoming the longer term norm.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like what does norm mean anymore? So yeah. You know what, I just want to remind our listeners that this is a pre-recorded show. So if there's any questions that they have during the show, they won't be able to call in. And I'm so looking forward to getting back into the studio and doing live shows and being able to say welcome to my live show, live in the studio here. Just to put a bit of background, Nasreen is somebody who I've always known of. Her oldest sister and myself, we went to primary school together. Nasreen's also a very, very close friend of one of my cousins. So I was just saying to Nasreen just off air, she's always been in the background. And I think a couple of, about 2 or 3, actually three Ramadans ago, we met at Taraweeh, and we just, we started talking and we exchanged numbers. And then after that, our communication became more frequent. And that's my introduction to you, Nasreen. So if you can just give a brief introduction about yourself to our listeners so they know more about you before we start divulging into our conversation.
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, I'm a single mom of 2, alhamdulillah. And I guess I'll just give you all the boring stuff. So my daily day job is that of a project manager. I currently work for a startup company, a technology company, where we sort of we're trying to sort of scale the company. So it's managing sort of projects to automate manual processes. And I'm also a student as well as a D&I advocate for promoting diversity and inclusion in my workplace. And at a community level, I'm currently a governor as well for a school, which I have been for 9 years.
Wow. Right, that's a new thing I learned about you, Nasreen. So it's very interesting, isn't it? And is there anything else? Sorry, I interrupted you there. Is there anything else?
No, I mean, like I say, I mean, you already know this. You've read some of my blogs that I do.
Yes.
It's kind of like a hobby that I've picked back up now that we're in lockdown and I've got a bit more time. And I've also started my own online business during the pandemic. It's just sort of selling Indian attire online, which I get direct from places like India, Pakistan, and so on. So yeah.
Okay. So this is a lady who at the beginning of her introduction said, let's get all the boring stuff out the way. And it's not boring at all. It's really exciting, you do so much. And, we know that it can be difficult as a parent, being a single parent. And, you're doing all of these amazing things. And to be a governor in a school and representing your community, to have your own business, because what I'm hearing you say that you've gone back to blogging. So I want to hear about where you're blogging. We're going to talk a lot about the blogging that you're doing and why you're doing it. And that's going to be the what we're going to be talking about throughout the show, inshallah. But you're doing the blogging, you've started your business online, and you've really taken the pandemic to turn it into positive and do things that are serving you and serving others as well. So let's go on and talk about, and once again, thank you for that introduction. It's quite inspiring actually, so not boring at all. let's talk about what made you start blogging. And I didn't realize, I thought it was actually something that you just started doing in during the pandemic. But in your introduction, you said you're going back to doing blogging. So let's talk about where you started with your blogging.
Yeah, so when I was in my teens, I did one or two blogs, but they were like, teenagers style, just blogging about like lifestyle and so on. But now that we've, so since the pandemic and lockdown, I think March 2020, I think.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I found that I had more time on my hands, I guess. And being at home, my children, they're not exactly young, they're teenagers, so they're not around me. They're always off doing their own thing. So I had less the busyness of, a social life. And that gave me more time to reconnect with and do more of what I like, which is reading and writing. So basically, blogging just kind of came naturally to me. And I just reacquainted myself with that passion again. I think also for me, I'd had a bit of a hard time prior to the lockdown, and blogging became a bit of an outlet for me. I think it's a brilliant outlet. And I don't think, with blogging, you don't have to be a professional writer. I think for anyone, blogging allows, anyone to share their experiences that others can relate to, even learn from. So I think blogging is just more of an outlet for me, and it allows me to share my experiences, my journey in life. I don't know, Shazna, you've read some of my blogs. I've got a website called Life of a Nomad, which I've set up in particular for my blogs, but I'm also on Medium as well, where I publish them with publishers. But on my website, Life of a Nomad, it's about a person on a journey of life. We're all on a journey, aren't we? We're all on this physical and spiritual journey of life. So it isn't about me traveling to different parts of the world, although it can be. It's just talking about life experiences, what I've learned. Because with age, you learn a lot, don't you?
Yes, you do. Age and life are like, through age and through life, like they are like the biggest teachers in life.
Definitely.
I feel.
And I think through life we make mistakes, and we learn from them. And these mistakes are so good to share with others, so they don't go down those down that route as well. But yeah, I mean, blogging is just so many different things to me. It's blogging about life. It's blogging about things that I'm interested, like psychology, and I like politics. I like to dab at politics. I definitely like philosophy, so you'll find a lot of philosophical quotes in my blogs. I try to.
Yeah, actually, just to set the context here, like Nasreen is sitting and we're recording on Zoom, and our videos are running at the back of her. She's got a wall full of beautiful frames, and I can see from here that they are quotes and inspirational quotes. And so I really, your face lit up when you were talking about philosophy and all of this kind of stuff. So just want to bring that passion to our listeners to actually kind of like reinforce that passion from you. So yeah, carry on.
Of course. So like I say, I mean, with blogging, I like to incorporate the three subjects that I'm really, passionate about. And we'll talk about blogs later, but you'll notice in a lot of my blogs, I do incorporate a bit of politics, a bit of philosophy, a bit of psychology. And that's it really for me. It's just sharing things that I know and things that I've experienced through life.
And that's a really interesting thing that you've shared, because what I hear you say is that, you do it as a way to almost heal yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a therapeutic kind of journey that you go on, because it's an outlet, journaling is something that's always encouraged when you go down the route of like therapy or counseling. Journaling is something that's encouraged, and journaling in essence is writing and putting down your thoughts, your feelings, your journeys onto paper. And what you've done is you've taken that, but you've done it in a constructive way in blogging. You've created a website, you've put it out there, you're sharing it with people. And what I found was really interesting that you said you don't have to have an interest in writing. It doesn't need to be pitch perfect. It doesn't need to be a particular way or a certain number of paragraphs or anything like that. It's what you're essentially passionate about, what you're feeling, putting that out in writing and then putting it out there for others to read and relate to and connect to. It's amazing what you're doing. You know, I've always wanted to blog, but I've not been brave enough. I think I might try it. Like, I really think I might try like putting a few things out there. Because I want to blog about endometriosis and surgical menopause, which are like the key kind of like the key things that have happened in my life, the key incidents. And you know, I like what you said about you put your journey on there, your stories, so that people can connect to them, and your mistakes that you've made along the way, so people can also learn from them. I'm going to go now to some of the let's start with some blogs that you've shared with me and you've come across, you've written. You did this one back in December last year, and it's this pandemic turned me into an introvert. So we would have been March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, 7 months into the lockdown, and then you wrote this article. So let's talk to our listeners about, you know, what in essence this blog is about, and you know, what you've shared and what you were trying to show and bring to the attention of the readers. So over to you, Nasreen.
I think that blog I wrote at a time where, you're right, 7 months into the pandemic. I had barely any contact with my family, just over the phone. And for someone like me who is a very sociable person, I literally, you invite me, I'm there first. I'm the first one there, knocking on the door, banging the door down. And this is like, I remember when the pandemic happened and we were all sent home to work from home, and you know, we had to sort of isolate from family and, like, you know, sort of you know, keep to ourselves. I think my family members were like, how are you going to cope? You know, you're not that sort of person. And I was like, yeah, how am I going to cope? And I think, I mean, 7 months in, I learned a lot about myself, because you have that time. And I think the busyness of life doesn't give you that time to value that time that you have. And I learned a lot about myself. I was given that solitude that I needed to reconnect with myself. And I found that within that 7 months, I transformed from a serious extrovert into some form of introvert. I found I was happy with staying at home with a book in my hand. You know, I was quite kind of happy and content with the quiet life. Yeah, and that hasn't changed, by the way. It's just, I must have just just morphed into this you know, introvert that might have already been in me. But yeah, it's I guess the underlying message that I was sharing with that is that, you know, we all need to reconnect with ourselves at some point, and you need that time alone to be able to do that. And I think life can get so busy that people forget to connect with themselves once in a while.
Yeah, I love the way you wrote. In a way, I equated being busy with living a full and contentful life. I was busy being busy, and almost like the pandemic, you know, when I'm reading this, it forced you to stop and find a different meaning to a contentful life without being busy being busy. Definitely. And that's what essentially turned you into an introvert, because you were channeling that time and that energy into yourself. And I think the pandemic forced everybody kind of to become an introvert, because you didn't have anywhere to go and mingle and socialize and, you know, be like the life of the party, the you know, the one who just became that social butterfly. So yeah, and it's interesting that you use the word morphing, because usually we morph into being a butterfly, but you've had to morph inwards and bring the butterfly home. So that's quite interesting analogy there. So no, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna go now. We've got enough time to actually probably share this. I don't know if you want to read this, because I find this one really touching. It is quite, it's actually not that lengthy, so maybe you can just read it too, and then we can have a chat about it and then maybe come back. So I want to remind our listeners, when I'm going to ask Nasreen to read one of her next blogs, A Love Letter to the Sleeping Child Within. And Nasreen said earlier on that when she started like with blogging, you don't have to be a professional writer to start blogging. And I think this would be an example of how Nasreen just brought it together and just went for it without thinking, oh, I'm not a professional writer, so I'm not going to write this and I'm not going to publish it. And this is something that you actually wrote last month, Nasreen, so let's go for it. A Love Letter to the Sleeping Child Within.
Yeah, I think this actually a friend inspired me to write this. Something had happened, and I just remembered, like like when I was talking about when you have that time to reconnect with yourself, you also have that time to go back to how you were back in your back in your days of when you were younger. So this one I was quite. I was kind of unsure of whether I should post it, but then my blogs, the way I post them is that I always want to come across authentic, so I always want to post how I feel.
Okay.
So I'll just read it to you. So, A Love Letter to the Sleeping Child. So, dear child within, I didn't forget you. You still lie dormant within me. I don't know what happened or exactly when, but somewhere in between adolescence and adulthood, I put you to sleep. Little did you know that this was me parting with you, our final goodbye. You slept so peacefully, and I looked at you with great sorrow. You possessed such a beautiful smile as you peacefully slept, thinking tomorrow we will play, laugh, and be merry. I then put the light out and left. I didn't mean to leave you behind. I was sold a lie, the lie of life. You see, life tells you to grow up and be a certain way, do things a certain way, and look a certain way, so that society accepts you as normal. But in wanting to seek society's approval of becoming normal, I had to choose. I had to put you into a deep slumber. Sometimes when life gets hard and I feel overwhelmed by this need to be normal, my mind is screaming inside to be anything but. We weren't created to fit into a mold, and I know that now. I still hear your childlike voice within me. Although faint, I suppress it. Sometimes I want to be silly. I want to play on swings and let go of that frown that is so normal on the face of every adult I see today. Let go of thinking about the past laid to rest and the future beyond my control, and just be carefree. I want to savor each moment and make the most of every second, minute, hour, and day. I want to make memories, so when I'm old and grey, sitting in my rocking chair, I can relay with a cheeky glare the gift of my childlike mannerisms and the mischief I caused along the way, passing down valuable lessons learned. Sometimes I just want to be me. I want to be reunited and hold your hand to never let go. To be an adult is easy. Let go of all that is creative within and become less of a risk taker. To put on a frown and busy myself with life and become a slave to money. Now, my child, I feel deeply ashamed to come back to you and ask you to forgive me. I harmed no one but myself, and I know that now. I fear you have outgrown me. I still hold many of my childhood memories very close to my heart, and the times I was the happiest. I remember when I was learning how to ride a bike for the first time. It was hard. I couldn't keep my balance and kept falling off. But I didn't give up. I was determined and mentally tough, and I had allowed all the time to learn. You laughed every time I fell, and I laughed with you, so much so that my stomach ached and it numbed any physical pain. I persevered because you were there encouraging me, telling me not to give up. I befriended life when I left you. Life didn't allow me to make mistakes or take risks. It numbed my creative thinking and entered me into life's never-ending race. Life's love was conditional in every sense. In school, everything became about memorization and grades. I got bored and would often play up. I wasn't made to sit in the classroom and memorize. Real knowledge was out there for me to discover through exploration and making mistakes. At college, looks and popularity became important. At work, competition in wealth and job titles, cars, it's a never-ending spiral. It didn't matter what others were doing. Life became a rat race, and I can't remember signing up for this. I thought adulthood was going to be fun. Looking at adulthood from the perspective of a child, you see freedom. And that's what I wanted, not to be imprisoned. I later realized I already had freedom. I miss you dearly, my child. Pablo Picasso, a famous painter, once said, every child is an artist, and the problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. Albert Einstein, a famous physicist, once said, imagination is everything. Do not grow old, no matter how long you live. Never cease to stand like that curious child before the great mystery into which we were born. George Bernard Shaw, an Irish playwright, critic, and political activist, once said, we don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. I have come back to you after a long time apart, and I know you will forgive me because that is one of the delightful gifts of a child that most adults lack. I know your love is always unconditional, so wake, play, laugh, and be merry with me. Today is a new day. Today we will merge and become one again. All my love, the misguided adult.
Wow. Wow. Like that was just simply beautiful. It's taken my mind to so many different corners of my own life, and very deep as well.
It is.
So thank you for sharing that, Nasrin. How does it make you feel after reading that out aloud?
You know, it's every time I read that, it feels it's a bit of a sad one. I think I wrote that kind of early morning, and it was just it just all sort of blurted out into, like, I didn't go back to it, amend it, edit it. Because I wake up very early in the morning, I have time to sit down and reflect, and I think that's when my best writing happens.
Yeah,
I I just put it out there, and I mean, everything I spoke about, it's like a poemy sort of, it's like a diary entry. We have this child within us that we forget about as we grow old. We get too serious in life, and we forget that. We forget to reconnect with that child within us once in a while. Yeah, so I mean, that was a bit of a deep.
I love this. I love, this is the one line, like with many of them, but this one just hit me the hardest, which is, I have come back to you after a long time apart. I know you will forgive me because that is one of the delightful gifts of a child that most adults lack. And that's so much truth in that.
Definitely.
Like the forgiving element. And, we carry so much from our childhood, not just the things that we think we could have done better, but also things that people have done to us and we didn't like that, and we hold on to it. And, we lose the ability to forgive as we grow up, and we hold on more, and, that weighs us down. And I really love the way that you've written this, and it's so many different, you go from one part to another part, and it's just beautiful. And what I like about what you said is that, it's really nice to learn that this is an uncut version. It's just as you wrote it, and that you write in the morning. And one of the things that I was encouraged to do many years ago as part of coaching, and it was also in a book called The Artist's Way, which is every morning try and do some writing. And I remember I started doing it with a few other friends. We did it as a group thing. And I remember one of them saying, like, when I write in the morning, it's amazing. I almost become like a Rumi. And I'm like, I write these beautiful, beautiful things. And there's so much truth in that. When you write, first thing in the morning and you try and do that, that's when you'll start to capture some amazing and beautiful thoughts and structures and sentences and choices of words. So yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I am gonna stop right here now because I think it's a really good point to stop at before we move on to your next blog for a short break, and then we'll come back. But just tell me in kind of like a quick summary what you're feeling right now after reading that. Is it?
I think it's an emotional piece, isn't it?
It is.
It's like, yeah, it is one of my deeper pieces of writing that, and I think just it's kind of sad. Like when you read it, I kind of speak about the characters as if they're two different characters.
Yeah.
That's me looking back at my child, but really we're one. And it's almost like the child within me was my friend, my long lost friend, and you know. It's amazing. Like I say, that was a morning uncut, and it just came straight from the from inside.
From inside, yeah, deep inside. Yeah, definitely. So thank you for sharing that. We're just going to go on to a short break. Do stay tuned with us, and we'll be back at about 7:30, and we'll continue with Nasreen and her blogging and sharing more blogs with you. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in Birmingham, and this is the Women's Hour with Amila, and I will be your host for the next half an hour or so, and I'm joined by a very inspiring actually guest, Nasreen Akhtar, and we have been reading. Well, she actually just read before the break one of her blogs that she wrote, entitled "A Love Letter to the Sleeping Child Within." It was a very deep blog that you wrote, and yeah, anybody who wants to read Nasreen's work, it's Life of a Nomad 84. If you Google that, I'm guessing, Nasreen, they should be able to read some of your articles. And Nasreen says she's not a professional writer, but I beg to differ, and she's just does blogging as something that she enjoys doing. She loves reading, she loves writing, and she just pours all her thoughts and energy and feelings out into writing and then shares them through her blogs. So thank you, Nasreen, before the break for sharing that and your insight into why you chose to write that particular blog. Now let's move on, and I'm going to go on to another one of your blogs, and this one you wrote, I think, again last month, and there is power in kindness, and you start off by saying a quote by Mark Twain: "Kindness is a language which the deaf can hear and the blind can see." Talk to us more about this article, the thinking behind it, and how it all came together.
So I mean, it is what it is. It's talking about kindness, promoting kindness, and how kindness not only benefits the taker, but also the giver. So it has an element of psychology to it, where by being kind, the person who you're being kind to, yes, they benefit, but the person who's giving that kindness benefits even more so. I mean, a lot of it is based around psychology. So I was talking about psychology behind how a simple thing like a smile can uplift someone's day, mood, and just by you smiling, even if it's a forced smile, it uplifts your mood and your, the way you feel, sort of thing. So it's just sort of promoting kindness and the benefits around it, the benefits of doing good deeds, and so on. So yeah,
it's really nice because I'm looking at your article and reading your article. You're right, you do go through like your own thoughts and then bringing psychology into it and quotes into it, and just reading. Bringing in also hadith into it and things that our Prophet ﷺ taught us. Every act of kindness is a form of charity. You talk about to live in service to others through acts of kindness is to live a soulful life of fulfillment. And you go on to use a quote to say, "No man becomes rich unless he enriches others."
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. I'm just browsing through this, and I really encourage our listeners to go on there and read some of your blogs that you've written.
With that particular blog, I sort of spoke about a book that I had read. I was part of a book club with the company that I work for, and we read a book on leadership, which was called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a bestseller. And in that book, they talk about 30 principles. And if you sort of had to summarize those principles with one word, I'd say it's kindness.
Okay.
I think if you ever want to win friends and influence people, I'm sure we all have that desire within us to reach that state of self-actualization that Maslow speaks about in his hierarchy of needs. It always starts with kindness, doesn't it? If you're kind to people, why wouldn't you get kindness back? And, to win someone's trust, someone's, love or care, it does start with kindness. It's a give and take relationship, and it has to start somewhere. I talk about that book. I also use quotes from a poet that I really like. His name's Khalil Gibran.
Oh, yeah. I love it. I love his work.
Yeah, The Prophet is one that I read like a year ago, and I always go back to that book. He talks about family, life, death, love, sorrow, and when he puts it, the way he puts it is amazing. Like he talks about how you have to, in order to get happiness, you have to face sorrow. And it's so true. I just love Khalil Gibran. It's like anything of his I will read.
His work is really nice, and I find his work healing.
Yes, definitely.
There's an element of it, because I remember people like Paulo Coelho and Khalil Gibran. I know there's different ways people pronounce his name very differently, but those are books that I went to after I had gone through my divorce, and I found them to really help with the healing process and come out of it stronger. And on your article actually that you wrote, the one that we're talking about now, relating to kindness, you've got one of his quotes and an ever so beautiful picture of yourself. Tenderness and kindness are not signs of weakness and despair, but manifestations of strength and resolution.
Definitely, yes.
And it's what makes us weak that turns and makes us strong later on in life.
Yes, definitely. But it's funny you say, mention divorce, because that's something that I've gone through like 2 years ago. And I think that caused me to sort of get into reading poetry and you get you into it, doesn't it?
And
you're definitely right. Certain words and certain pieces are really healing. I think for everyone, I think reading is it's a brilliant outlet for healing, and journaling and these sort of things are really helpful.
Absolutely agree with you on that, Nasreen, because when I went through my divorce like about 15 years ago, it was books like these, the self-healing books, the self-care books, the journaling, that really helped me get through it and come out the other side stronger. And sometimes we've got to help ourselves as well. Anybody who is affected should obviously seek professional help.
Of course.
But this is, in terms of part of the self-help bit. And reading can sometimes scare people to think, oh my God, I don't have the time to read. But it's whatever you're able to do, just a little bit at a time. And I find, I think it's Khalil Gibran or Paulo Coelho, they did a small book of like just proverbs and quotes. Yeah. And I used to go and drive up somewhere nice, whether it was a park in front of a lake, sit on a bench, and that's where I would sit and read my books. And I used to find it really healing. And it really helped me get through it. And different things work for different people, and just putting it out there, this is something that I did, and Nasreen is seconding that herself as well in terms of reading and writing. It's really interesting what you said about the book that you read, as part of your book club, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's the act of kindness. And when we look at the best example that we have as Muslims, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was one of the most influential the most influential man ever to be in existence. And kindness is something that always used from him. When you read stories about him, and you look at the stories of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and you study how he was as a person, kindness is something that just oozes through from him.
You definitely associate the word kindness with our Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Absolutely. Okay, that was a really interesting conversation, Nasreen. I think I need to have you on my show as a regular guest, so you can just talk about every time you publish a blog, you should come on the show and we should talk about it and explore it. Right. This is a really interesting one that you wrote, I'm guessing earlier this month. And yeah, this is how to eradicate self-sabotaging thoughts. And this is really interesting. Like, I'm just going to go through your article again, but I'm going to ask you to talk about it. And straight away, what comes to my mind, I remember I mentioned earlier that I did some life coaching. This was about a good 15 years or so ago, after I got divorced. And one of the things that we spent a lot of time exploring was self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. So the sabotaging within ourselves, because when you take the concept of sabotage, you often think people around you are sabotaging what you have, but we don't realize a lot of them we're sabotaging ourselves. And it's being able to we did like quite a bit of work around identifying our own self-sabotage. So yeah, talk to me about this, a practical tip on reprogramming the mindset. So yeah, talk me through this.
So with this piece, it's more of a psychology sort of piece. So again, it's touching on what you just said. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, Mila, where you said that, often than not, we always think it's people or our environment that is sabotaging our lives, or when something goes wrong, we, find it easy to blame someone else or something else. But little we don't often look within ourselves first. And I think if you can sort of nail your mindset, then nothing can sabotage, anything you do. Even if you fail at something, you don't see it as a failure, because you change your perception and the way you see that. So when we talk about reprogramming the mind, I use scientific evidence, I use psychological evidence. So we're talking about the brain here. So we talk about how adaptable the brain is. I've seen people get to a certain age and they're like, oh, I can't read anymore. My brain's gone, turned into mush or whatever. These classic, sort of things you'd hear of people, but not really. The brain is like a muscle. And if you want to train it, you could train it and you can reprogram it. So if you've got like negative mindset, naturally you're going to sabotage, you're going to cause yourself self-sabotage. So if anything good happens in life, you're never going to see good to it. If anything bad happens, it's like, oh my God, the world's ended or whatever. So I always think, as humans, we're not born with negative thoughts. They obviously grow over time, or we plant them in our minds over time, and then they evolve and grow because we allow them to stay in our minds. But if we can program them into our minds, then we can also take them out and replace them as well. So what I've spoken about, the technique and the tips there, is nothing different to what CBT is, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's just my way of putting it in sort of a software language, more of a dev language, and so that you can see the science behind it and how very similar to a computer our brains are. So we can we're in control of writing our own scripts. So it's a bit like, when you talk about gratitude and positive affirmations, just simple things like that have such an amazing effect on changing your mindset. And, for you to be able to shift your paradigm and think about things in a different light. And that really does have for example, I'm reading a book at the moment by Robin Sharma. Don't know if you know him.
Oh, yeah. I've heard his podcasts and I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Well, I've joined his 5 a.m. club. So I wake up 5 a.m. every morning.
Do you do the power hour?
Yeah. So it's called the Victory Hour, 5 a.m. to Yeah, 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 a.m. Sorry, is victory hour, and in that victory hour, so this is what this article is based on. So we have 4 interior empires. You have your health set, your heart set, your soul set. Sorry, your mindset, your heart set, your health set, and your soul set. So your mindset is your psychology, heart set is your emotionality, health set is your physicality, and then you have your soul set, which is your spirituality.
Mhm.
If you think about it, as humans, they are what we are fundamentally made of. Now,
Absolutely. If you look at it in an Islamic perspective, it's akal.
exactly, yeah,
Your body is, in the Urdu language they call it jism. Then you've got the soul, which is the ruh.
yeah,
And I can't remember what the fourth one is now that
yeah.
you said.
So,
They're all there. It's different wording.
yeah. I always connect it back to Islam, like it's nothing different to what we learn in Islam. And basically, what Robin Sharma talks about is these are our interior empires. And when he says empires, if we don't protect these empires, then they affect our exterior empires, which is our creativity, our productivity, our prosperity, performance, lifestyle, and impact. But if we can protect these empires internally, as in fireproof your mindset, bulletproof your heart set, calibrate your health set, and develop your soul set, then you'd have all these external empires that will actually, you'll thrive in them. It's like for me, an example is blogging. I stopped doing it. Now I feel like I can do it because you kind of connect with your soul again. And I feel like I've got more time, my mindset's more developed and so on. So during that victory hour, it's divided into a 20-20-20 formula. So the first 20 minutes is you wake up, you jump out of bed. So I have my gym kit ready to go. Otherwise, I'll get lazy and go back to sleep again. It's easy to do, isn't it, right? So I get up. 20 minutes is fast cardio exercise because that's to kickstart your brain and to work your body, get the blood flowing and so on. The next 20 minutes is I do Fajr because it's Fajr time. So that's classed as my meditation. I'll sit there, I'll meditate, I'll do a bit of yoga with a nice background music on, dimmed lights. And then the last 20 minutes would be where I do reflection. Again, like blogs. So, that blog that I read earlier on, that was done at that time. Because you're at your most raw and, the world's sleeping. It's still dark outside. Your mind's really tranquil and, you're kind of, ready to sort of take on the world at that time. And I can see why he calls it the victory hour, because the days I don't do it, I'm telling you now, I feel really sluggish. And the days I do it, I find I'm really productive. And it's amazing. I'd really say anyone who doesn't know about the 5 a.m. club, you have to know about it and you have to try it at least to see what I mean.
Absolutely. You can't see Nasrin's face, but it's just lit up with like the amazingness that she gets from this victory hour. And what I want to do is not take away from what you've just shared, Nasrin, because somebody might be listening and thinking, wow, that sounds really good, but I don't know if I can do an hour. I say start with something. And I read another article where somebody else wrote a summary of Robin Sharma's The Victory Hour. And they said, even if you can't do the 20 minute, start with 10, 10, 10 and do half, just get that 30 minutes in and then increase it. And if you can't do 5 a.m. to 6 a.m., for whatever reason, health reasons, because I know, like for me, I can't do a 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. It won't be possible. So I try and do mine a bit later on in the morning. So whenever you can, but get that, whether it's that 1 hour or that half an hour. And, just like Nasreen kind of swears by it, I swear by it. And the days that I don't do it, I feel like, oh gosh, like there's something missing. And the days that I do it, I'm, boom, 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 it's such a productive day.
And you're right. You're right. There is no definitive time for it. Although 5 a.m. is called the victory hour, you've got to do it to what suits you best.
I just want to quickly share something from that article of yours that you wrote. I'm just going to read through it. I think a lot of people, when they hear this, they'll be able to connect to it, because we do often talk ourselves out of a lot of things, a lot of opportunities that come our way, because often we question, like, am I good enough for this? Am I ready for this? So just taking an excerpt of what you've written. Several years ago, I had an amazing opportunity to take up a senior role in my place of work. I enjoyed working there, and my enthusiasm would often rub off on others and show in my work. I enjoyed it that much that going back into education was off the table for a while. After taking a while to mull over the offer, I regretfully turned it down. You see, at the time, I felt I wasn't ready and that I didn't have the level of experience or the right qualifications needed for me to fulfill the role. Looking back now, I realized that I talked myself out of a perfect position that I was ready for, causing self-inflicted sabotage. My manager saw something in me that I couldn't see. Otherwise, why even consider me for the position? Every excuse I made for declining the offer, my manager had an answer or solution for. Why couldn't I see what he had seen in me? You see, my self limiting negative beliefs dictated my behavior at the time and became my self fulfilling prophecy. The prophecy of thinking I wasn't enough, worthy, or capable. I just love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you for putting that in your article and thank you for sharing that. And that doesn't need a discussion because that speaks volume on its own, right? I'm going to swiftly move on to what I want to talk about next. And we've got about another 5 minutes or so. Let's talk about International Women's Day, because that was just a couple of weeks ago. And March, we see a lot of events still marking International Women's Day. And the theme this year was around choose to challenge. Now, for somebody who writes deep things, who writes very meaningful content, and who shares a lot, I'm sure you have come across many examples in your life and incidents in your life where you've had to choose to challenge as a woman. Give us some insight and share something with us that our listeners can take meaning from as well.
International Women's Day is definitely something I always, every year, comes around without miss, and I'm there at the front line celebrating this and advocating it and so on. I think it's really important. Women's empowerment is, really important, and I don't think it's just for women, but also for men. Women are essentially the architects of society, and a beautiful quote by Diane Marie Childs sums it up beautifully. A woman is the full circle. Within her is the power to create, nurture, and transform. So for me, when you talk about choose to challenge, based on my recent experiences with divorce, when I was younger, education wasn't something that our parents would push women into, because it'd be like, oh, you're going to get married anyway. You don't need to, get to a certain, I think it's more of a cultural thing. So for me, being a mom, and I've got a daughter, for me, I always say to her, there is no limit to what we as women can accomplish. And, science has proven, as I have, that, women are cut from a different cloth. And, no offense to you guys, I'm just saying, I'm only saying the truth, which is we are great multitaskers. And, it's something that our counterparts struggle greatly with. And it's just the way we're wired. And I always say to my daughter, and I'd say this to any woman I come across, any young girls. I mean, like I recently did a careers talk for year 11 students at an Islamic school for girls. And I was just saying, like, there is no glass ceiling. There's no such thing. You can reach for the sky. Just because you're a woman, it doesn't mean you should limit what you can do. And I think as women, you've got to remember that we can do it. There's a lot we can do. We shouldn't limit ourselves in any way. And I think throughout history, there's proof of that. There's some amazing women, even in Islam, we don't have to look too far to look for aspiration. Some of the amazing women we hear of in Islam, for example, promoted women's rights well before any Western civilization did. So you got some wonderful women like Khadija radiallahu anha, who was the CEO of her time. She was resolute and noble in character. And, although she inherited her wealth, she was extremely successful in commerce and business. And I think that's just a real, amazing story to tell your young girls out there. And, then you got Aisha radiallahu anha. She was an educator, a scholar who had committed to memory many ahadith and Quran. And she proved that women can be far more learned than men. Again, no offense to the men listening. I'm just saying, She challenged and established women's rights and, gave women she sort of encouraged women with the rights to choose who they marry. And I know these are old, probably not issues right now, but these are things that were fought for back 1400 years ago. And then, you've got Fatima Al-Fihri. I don't know if you've heard of her. She was the founder of the world's oldest university in Morocco. So imagine that, a woman who's the founder of one of the oldest universities, and all because she had a vision, a dream, and she actually acted on that. So how many visions and dreams do we knock down in girls today? Because we say you have to settle down, you have to get married. There's no point in thinking big. And, and I just want to say, like, that's something I choose to challenge. I think our girls are capable of so much. And I think, we're proof of that, aren't we?
Absolutely.
I'm a working mom. I'm working full time. I'm single. I'm, managing 2 kids. I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, but I'm saying it's doable. You can do, as women, we are natural multitaskers, and we shouldn't ever limit ourselves, especially when it comes to education. It's so important you get a good education, because we are, the architects of society.
Yeah. I love how you said that we're from a different cloth and we are wired very differently. And I absolutely love that and agree to it. Just quickly, we are coming to the end of the show. Would you ever publish your work in a book?
I would, yeah. It's amazing you say that, because that's something that I'm really, I don't know, it's a lot of work, but I would love to. Why not?
Amazing.
Let's see.
Amazing. You must keep me posted as and when you do, because I want to be one of the first people who buys your book and puts a review on it. So, you know what, Nasreen, I've had so much fun doing this show with you. Thank you so much for coming on, and I definitely want you back on again, and I'm sure our listeners are going to be like, right, make sure you bring Nasreen back on again. So inshallah, we'll do another show together soon. Let's get some more articles, and then we'll have, bring them on and have a chat about them. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so Assalamu alaikum to you, Nasreen. Assalamu alaikum to our listeners. Be good, be safe, and keep smiling.